It's my great pleasure and my first and foremost duty on behalf of the JUSC members. We warmly welcome you all to this beautiful program. I assure you that this program shall be of full exuberance and excitement and will create some beautiful memories for us all. Without further ado, I would like to start off the session right away. After a long hiatus, we are back with another chapter of Stroke of Insight. Today we have with us Mr. Subhadeep Dutta. I welcome everyone to the 12th chapter of Stroke of Insight. It's a pleasure to have our speaker, Mr. Subhadeep Dutta, with us. Mr. Subhadeep Dutta is an experienced formulation scientist at SalioGen Therapeutics at USA in nanobiotechnology and our very own alumni of Jadavpur University of Chemistry Department, from where he had completed his Bachelor in Chemistry. He had completed his master's from IIT Bombay and PhD from Arizona State University. He now leads a diverse research team that led to over 7 publications, more than 10 scientific talks, 15 poster presentations, and even one patent. He has made great strides in the field of science and made numerous contributions to biotechnology. We are very grateful to have you here, Dada. With this, I would like to introduce the other host of the interview, Aditya Ghosh Dostidar.
Hello everyone, I am Aditya Ghosh Joshidar and I am a member of SOI and Muted team of Science Club. And I am also a student of Civil Engineering Department of Jadavpur University. I thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to host this show. Thank you. Hello everyone, I am Aditya Ghosh Joshidar and I am a member
I
of
would like
SOI
to ask Dada, should we be starting off with the questionnaire we are having, or will you be presenting your presentation?
Sure. So initially, I thought of presenting, but I think it's better. I can, kind of talk about it in that way. I mean, I can definitely touch base on the important points which are to be noted. But I skipped the presentation because I think it's better to just talk about it rather than looking at the screen for the presentation, because it's more on how you will prepare, and definitely I would probably better to I will probably give you a small introduction, like probably like 5 to 10 minutes, and then it's better if you ask me the questions, or if our audience has any questions based on what I talked, and then I can answer following those. Is that sounds good?
Definitely, Dada.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as you introduced me, and again, first of all, thank you, JUSC, for this effort. I think it's a great initiative, not only to connect seniors with the current batch in JU, but also, especially giving the current students a platform to interact with the seniors who are probably you did not get a chance to talk to, because we graduated and we followed up on our career, but still we can be of your help with these kind of platforms as a knowledge source. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, that I completed my bachelor's in Jadavpur, and then I did my master's in IIT Bombay, and then basically I followed by a PhD in Arizona State University. I'm working in a scientist role here in a biotech company here in Boston, Massachusetts, or in United States. And my main work is now pretty much interdisciplinary, even though I am a trained chemist. I work with a lot of engineers, and also a lot of medical professionals as well. Because once you go higher up in your career, you will realize that different fields like physics, chemistry, biology, and also engineering, to name a few, like biomedical engineering, chemical engineering, these are pretty much goes hand in hand. And you need all of these skill sets to finally solve a bigger problem. So just to give you guys a little bit insight, many of you are currently in your bachelor's degree, either in your second year or third year or fourth year. But I think to finally solve a bigger problem, a mindset of what your goal of your career, in 5 6 years down the line. I know it's very hard to predict. Some of you might already have good job opportunities already, and that's kind of where we don't think much and get what I get and follow that. I mean, in some cases there are different types of barrier. For example, economic barrier and other things comes into play. But if you have a certain goal, especially to go in higher education to do a master's degree or a PhD degree, you need to think why you want to do that, right? And also you have to think what are the opportunities will come if you do that. So that's a huge thing. With your bachelor's degree you have a limited things which you can do, but if you expand your skill set with a master's degree or a doctorate degree, that will create more opportunities for your future. So when I was a bachelor, at that time, I went for the master's degree because I wanted to do more research. As a bachelor student, we get to do very limited research. I had a chance to do some projects in ISCS. All of you should know, like cultivation of science, which is just opposite to Jadavpur University. But that was almost it. And, I wanted to, I love doing research, and that's why I wanted to go for a master's degree, because usually for a master's degree, you get to do like approximately 6 months to a year of research, which is great. And actually for you guys, especially in the stream of engineering, you have an advantage of choosing, especially for going into abroad, in terms of especially for USA. So that's why, since we have a topic that should I do a master's degree or should I do a PhD? And this is a great question. And there are certain factors which you should keep in consideration when you are either planning for a master's degree or a PhD degree. So, since a engineering degree in bachelor's or a bachelor of engineering is a 4 year degree, you have a chance to go for a direct PhD after you finish your bachelor's. So, because in US the undergraduate degrees are 4 years, so as you have completed a 4 years undergraduate degree, you have a chance to go to a PhD degree directly by skipping a master's degree. So that's a huge gain. You can do it, but definitely there will be struggle that you are definitely need to take up on a lot of courses as you start your PhD degree. You definitely would have a easier path, if you do a master's and then a PhD. But definitely doing masters in US actually cost us a lot of money, because most of these masters applications doesn't come with a fellowship. So that's why you have to prepare yourself that how I am going to fund my master's degree in US. So there are certain very common things which all of us had to do when we came abroad, especially in US. There are two exams. Nowadays, things are changing a little bit. That's why you get to really prepare yourself quite early. I would say a year early is a good amount of time. Let's say, for example, when you finished your third year, you start your preparation, because usually for masters, sometimes they take it in the spring, but most of the time it's a fall admission, which means your admission is around July, August. That's why you need to prepare yourself 1 year early. So there are mainly two exams which is related to English, which is basically called GRE and TOEFL, and there is an alternative of TOEFL which is called IELTS. So these are some basic exams which you guys need to take, irrespective of if you are going to master's or a PhD program. Now, there are definitely a lot of cutoffs. You will see different universities has different cutoffs of these examination scores. But to be honest with you, these are not really very hard and fast. Even though we see, for example, 90 in a TOEFL, but there are exceptions, and there are considerations they make if they see the candidate is really good, in terms of their knowledge or in terms of their research. So there are a lot of exceptions. So there are a couple of things, as I said, you should start early, because there are many universities which actually offers fellowships, even for master's degrees. So it is better to be proactive and start emailing those universities that if there are any fellowships, if you are considering a master's degree. If you are coming for a PhD degree, as I said, you have a opportunity to do a direct PhD without even doing a master's degree, because you guys already have a 4-year undergraduate degree from Jadavpur University, right? So that's why you get to choose between a master's degree and a PhD degree. But the advantage here is most of the time when you are doing your PhD degree, you are having some kind of a fellowship. So from the university, it comes with different ways. Sometimes we get to teach some classes. As a PhD student, I taught undergraduate lab courses, like, for example, whatever lab you guys are already doing in Jadavpur. Think about being a PhD student and teaching those kind of labs in US. So when you do those kind of things, you get to be paid as a TA or a teaching assistant, we called. So otherwise, also there are ways that the whoever will be your supervisor or your advisor in or the professor basically with whom you will be working for your PhD, they will provide research funding to fund you as a PhD student. So these are a couple of ways you will be funded being as a PhD student. Now, irrespective of if you are doing a master's or a PhD, I would say your goal has to be, definitely there are coursework, there are a few courses which you have to take. But I would say your main focus has to be the research. That is mainly why we go to US, because there are a lot more good infrastructure, which you will see comparatively what we have, not only just in, Jadavpur. I'm talking about even if I compare IIT Bombay versus where I did my PhD research, there are, a lot more sophistication I have here. So those kind of exposures you are looking for, and that's why you are coming abroad, leaving your family and friends over there. And that's a huge struggle. And the good thing about a master's degree is it's short. It's like you get to do for 2 years. Sometime you can extend to 3 years, because most of the time master students goes for internships. And that comes as a special, you will be under F1 visa, but it's basically called CPT, or curriculum practitioner training, where you can extend your stay by doing that internship. There are internship for summer, there are internship for 6 months to a year. And, it's not that you are delaying your degree, you are just getting opportunities to work as an intern in these industries. And, most of the time you will be getting paid um, for those internships as well. So it is not only giving you research exposure outside academia, and those will be really helpful if you guys are interested to go to industrial research. If you have a motivation to stay in academia, being a faculty or being a professor, that's a different thing. Then I think doing a PhD is really necessary in that respect. But if your goal is to get into industrial research, PhD is not really a compulsion, I would say. If you have a master's degree, you can easily get a well qualified job, after graduation. And doing those internship really helps, because that basically gives you a experience of industry, even though when you are not a full-time employee in industry. So that's why, if you are going for a master's degree, I would really tell you that you should look for those industrial internship opportunities. Mainly those goes on in the summer, but also sometimes there are semester-wise internships where student goes into fall or spring semester as well. So the other thing which is necessary for these masters and PhD applications are mainly statements of purpose, or SOP. And the SOP is very personal document. Think about what you have achieved in your life so far, and what is your motivation behind your next step, right? Whatever you want to do, either you want to do a PhD or a master's. So that's what you guys need to reflect in your SOP. I would say it is better to ask seniors, if they can help you, reviewing your SOP, or even if they can provide their SOPs, so that you guys can read and get an idea how it looks like. So that's why I was telling earlier that it's better to start preparing earlier, because then you will have good amount of time to prepare yourself with these things. One last thing I would want to touch base, that when we choose our university for either masters or PhD, we typically, at least when I did, we typically go over university rankings. And that's I would say, after finishing my PhD, I realized that, and many of us, not only just me, but we realized that I would say industry rank, university ranking is a is one way to look at it, but it's not the last thing, or it's not the final thing which you should look at. So I would say it's the main three things you should look at, is, especially if you're doing a PhD, definitely your research interest, what topic is interest you most. In even in, for example, chemical engineering is a broad field. There are many different subtopics inside chemical engineering, right? So you should look onto those, and based on those, you should go into university of your choice, and you should look for the faculty profiles and see what kind of research they are doing. And if you see you are interested for any of these faculties research, you should email them and ask that if they have vacancy, if they are willing to take you. Because, for example, I would give you an example of mine, that when I applied to Arizona State University, I did not communicate it too much with faculties before going there. So what happened, that many times, even though I saw that there was good research, or the research of my interest was available, but when I went there and talked to the faculties, they were pretty much full with their student capacity. And I that's why there are, of course, different options. And I finally went outside of my chemistry department, and I went to chemical engineering, and my advisor, my PhD advisor, was in chemical engineering. But basically, it is better if you communicate with your 2B research advisor beforehand, and talk to them about your interest, and if they have vacancies to take you as either as a master student or a PhD student. That really helps, and that basically gives both of you good amount of time. And especially if you are doing a PhD, I would say not only just research topic, but also the research advisor and also the lab members are really plays a good amount of role in your entire journey of PhD, because you have to think that the PhD is a long journey. We typically say it's 5 years. Sometimes it's stressed under 5.5. Sometimes it's 6. But average I would say 5 to 5.5. So you need to make sure that you are very much comfortable with your advisor and also with the lab members, because most of your time you'll be spending with your advisor, discussing about the research or the science of your research interest, or also you'll be working with your lab members. So as a PhD student, whenever you are applying, you should first look into those faculty profiles from their website and see their research interest. And if you see them interesting with lies with your interest, then you should email them and tell them that you are a prospective student who are applying. If they have vacancies to take you as a PhD student, if he says yes, you should schedule a meeting where you can not only talk to him and see how you like him. You can ask different questions, not only just topic of research. You can talk about what his previous student did after they graduated, after they got their PhD. For example, if you have an interest to going into industry, you need to make sure that from that lab where you will be doing your PhD, students are going to industries after their PhD, right? So if you have those kind of atmosphere already in the lab, then it's easier for you for the transition after you finish your degree as a PhD or a master's, because they pretty much know and they guide you through the process. So that's why networking plays a really big role. During that time when I was a master student, looking to go to US as a for my PhD. That time LinkedIn was not that much available, I would say, or not that much widely used. I used mainly the Facebook as a platform to talk with seniors, whoever is already pursuing their PhD, talked with them and see how they did the entire process or how they're doing in their PhD. So that really helped. And that's why I would say, talking to seniors, for example, if you see anyone who has done a chemical engineering degree from JU and also pursuing a PhD or a master's in chemical engineering, it's a great way to connect with them and talk to them and see, what advice they can give you. And many times we face the similar challenges, when we come here. And if we know about those challenges, then it's easier to tackle those. And every one of us are surviving well here, so it's not to make you afraid or anything, but definitely you are going out of your comfort zone, right? And you are going to a completely different country where there are many differences, not only just culturally, but in other aspects as well. So if you are well aware of all of those, your transition is very easy, and it's very comforting. It's you are not really overwhelmed with all these new things in a new country. So all of these I would say really helps. So as I said, um, you guys have both the options to do a master's and a PhD. Now if you are going to go to industry, I would say PhD is not necessary. So you can do a PhD because that really helps for your future career. Like, for example, when you are trying to be a manager or a much higher level position in industry, sometimes having a PhD helps in that respect. But otherwise, I would say, since you will have a US degree, either a master's or a PhD, it doesn't really make a huge difference in doing either PhD or a master's. But especially if if you are trying to be in academia, or being as a faculty or a professor, I would say doing a PhD is a almost a required thing nowadays. So but definitely you have an option to skip your masters. In that case, you can do a direct PhD, where you probably have to take a little bit more classes or courses, but definitely it's worth doing that, or worth pursuing that, considering that your outcome will be great. Even as a PhD student, you'll have more research experience, and you might secure a much better industry job. And it really helps when you will be promoted, and you will be going to a managerial role, since you in that time, most of the time, having a PhD degree really helps. So I would say these are my general advice, but definitely I'd love to talk to you on other questions which you might have, or the moderator may have prepared.
Definitely, sir. I'll be asking some of the questions which I have got from the chat, and some of them are
Sure.
asking that how is the PhD or MS program like in Japan, right? They are asking that.
Okay, so I would say, I'm not 100% sure, but especially in Japan, but I would say US has a very good system, in a sense that you clear your GRE and TOEFL, or the IELTS, and you just apply to every universities of your choice based on your score. And as I said, emailing faculties or the professors is not compulsory thing. You can do it well advanced, so that it helps you to make the transition better. But I know for many European institutes, the system is quite different, where it's more like a personalized application, where you directly email the faculties, and they kind of tell you what's the scenario, how the fellowship is going to be, and if they have the space in the lab to accommodate you as a PhD or a master student. So most of the time it's like a one-on-one interaction. You are directly emailing the faculty. So I would assume even in Japan, like that. I'm not 100% sure, but uh, if I can, as I can remember, that I have not heard about any centralized system like US has. As I said, it's very straightforward, and it's once you know these things, preparing your CV or a resume, and also the statement of purpose. This is really straightforward to apply, and get admission. So it's very straightforward. I don't think Europe or other countries has like straightforward programs, where I'd say it's more personalized. You have to apply to the faculties, and email them and talk to them if they have vacancies. If they have, then what they do, then most of the time you have to take the IELTS. For Europe and most of the other countries, that's the preference. After you take that, then you have to apply to the university. When the professor gives the approval that he or she can take you as a PhD or a master student, then they kind of guide you for fellowships, if there is any, or things like that.
Thank you, Dada. Dada, the next question that I would like to ask is that can you please explain the process of application for direct PhD in US and other countries?
Can you repeat what you just said? Your voice was breaking.
Okay, I'm sorry. Uh, so Dada, can you please explain the process for directly applying for PhD program in US and other countries?
Sure. So for US, as a direct PhD, the application mainly consists of as I said, the GRE and TOEFL. These two exams, it's better if you take it by December. For example, most of the cases, the university application deadlines are in December or in January. For the admission in fall, which is basically in July August timeframe. So the previous year, you basically take the GRE and TOEFL and prepare your SOP, which is basically the statement of purpose. And for PhD application, sometimes there is one more thing which is necessary, which is called research interest, or one document where you basically talk about what is your research interest. I would say it's not super critical. Statement of purpose is really personal, and sometimes that's really essential, or that's one of the critical thing they evaluate. So research interest, you can kind of, if you have some kind of research experience, you can talk about that. But they don't really expect you to have a lot of research experience, to be honest with you. What they try to see is what kind of motivated you to do the PhD, because PhD is mainly quite a lot of research for several years. So other than these two things, the most important thing, or one of the most important thing, is the letter of recommendation, or LOR. So the letter of recommendation, I would say, you should target the faculties which you think will give you the best recommendation letter for you. So sometimes we make the mistake that we try to go for example, the best faculty, and we think that, so he's the really big professor, and having a recommendation letter from him or her will make a really good impact. But if for example, if you compare, a really big professor is giving you a very normal or a okay recommendation letter, versus a junior faculty is giving you a really great and very personal recommendation letter, why he likes you. So that really makes a much more difference, because just think about it, that when the universities are reviewing your application, they don't really have time to see whoever is writing the letter, how big, or how if it's a junior faculty or a senior faculty, or it's a really big professor. They don't really have time to judge those, right? So they are only looking at what they see on their hand, and what is written, and that is on you, right? So that's when it is really important to choose those faculties who will write really a great recommendation letter for you. And it doesn't really matter, and whoever is writing, as long as they are in the similar field, it really doesn't matter. So that's the one important thing I would say. Another thing, I would say that, as I just told you, that the research is very interdisciplinary when you uh, go higher in your career, right? So as I said, I am a chemist by training, but in my PhD, most of my research is in chemical engineering and in the field of biomedical engineering. So whenever you are applying for your PhD, think about that. So not necessarily, as you have finished your bachelor's in, for example, chemical engineering, you are not really restricted to do a PhD in chemical engineering. If you go to, for example, website of universities in US and go for biomedical engineering degree or a PhD, you would see that there are prerequisite, and there you will see chemical engineering is there. So you have a chance to even explore something new. which is also related, but it's need not to be, since you have a chemical engineering in BA, in a bachelor's degree, you are not really restricted to do a chemical engineering PhD. You can do a biotechnology PhD. You can do a nanoscience PhD. You can do a biomedical engineering PhD. So there are a lot of flexibility on that. So I would say explore those options, because PhD is a long process, right? As I said, like 5 to 5.5 years. So you should see what are the fields which interest you, and you still will take your knowledge of chemical engineering, what you have learned, but you will learn something much more and something new, and that's what is important. So I would say don't restrict yourself in just in your field, see what are the related fields as well. So that's the more advantage if you go more in those interdisciplinary fields as well, like fields like pharmaceutical sciences. So there are a lot more options like that. So that's kind of the general advice I would have about the PhD application process.
Okay, that was a very insightful answer, Dada. And I guess we have some more number of questions from our inquisitive audience. So, Rijit says that how much weightage is given to your GPA while applying in US colleges for masters or PhD?
Right. So it's a great question. Another great question. So I would say when you are applying to PhD, I would say probably it's important, but it's not highly important, because for PhD application, your GRE TOEFL score, your SOP, and also your LOR or letter of recommendation, all of these plays equal and important roles, including your GPA. But it's not just one thing. So for masters, I would say it's probably gets more weightage on GPA, because I don't think for masters they ask for letter of recommendation, but even though if they ask, I would say that will have a less weightage. Even for SOP, that will have less weightage, probably just because for masters versus PhD, I would say for as a PhD, they try to emphasize more on the research side, and that's when even though GPA tells something, but honestly, like it doesn't really matter too much for when you go for higher education. For example, when you do your PhD, even then you will have a GPA. But honestly, after finishing your PhD, when you apply for jobs, either in industry or in academia, your GPA doesn't really matter. Only thing matters is what skill set you have learned during your PhD, what are the research you have done, what are the publication you have made. So all of these plays a really big role when you go higher up in your career. So GPA plays a role. I would say probably having a GPA more than 3 is, I mean, in US there is a 4-point scale. You have to convert your 10-point scale to the 4-point scale here. But usually any GPA over 3 is well taken here. I would say there is no strict limit or a bound on with respect to that. But it's a great point.
So, Dada, we have actually quite heard about like if someone goes to the US for pursuing higher studies and all, then he or she might face problems like cultural problems, like he or she might face some difficulties gathering friends and all. So, I would like to ask that did you face any cultural shock when you went to the US, or was there any difficulty while gathering a friends group or trying to make friends?
Right. It's a great point. And I touched little bit that aspect initially when I was talking, and that's why I think it's really important to start networking with your seniors. For example, you make a profile in LinkedIn and try to see from your department if 2 years, 3 years, 5 years before, if anyone has graduated and is already in a university. So definitely when we go as a first year, you face a lot of new things. There are cultural shock, right? Like you are in a complete different country where food habits is different. You are your sleeping habit will change, right? So there are a lot of these different things which comes into play, including your research, your coursework, and in some cases, if you are a PhD student, you have to do these teaching assistancy or teaching labs, doing a TA. So there are a lot of these new things which is coming into play, especially in your first semester. So fortunately, I was lucky in the sense that I was in Arizona State University. So Arizona State University is known for having I would say most number of international students, but not much universities has that. So, but most of the cases, these universities has international student union, which is basically kind of helps you to make those connections. Not necessarily, your university has too many, Indian students in your department, but these unions, what they do, they connect. For example, biomedical engineering has some Indian student who can help you or make friends, and they just connect, and that group stays forever, right? So that's why I think when you are looking to those universities, talking to the seniors are important, and you get to know the culture. As I said, ASU is I would say is very famous for having most number of international students. And if I give you numbers, you will be shocked that in my batch we have around 40 PhD students, and out of those, more than 50%, which means more than 20, were international students. And definitely there were multiple Indians, but when there is more than 50% international students, that means you will have some comfort zone. It's not just the American culture is dominating you. You have other cultures you get to know, and talk to them and making new friends. And definitely you will have Indian friends and communities in those places as well. I would say the first semester gets really busy finding those options, having settled with your own life, because you have to do your everyday life by yourself. You have to do groceries, you have to do your own cooking, all those things, right? Like which we probably never did in our bachelor's or in our master's when we were in India, right? So all of those new things comes into play, but definitely you would get those groups in your university. There will be associations or communities, which is a easier way to connect with those Indian students.
Okay, that was very, very interesting. And I think most of the questions has been answered. And there are a few more questions from
Sure.
Agniva. He's saying that he's a student of BCE UG2 and he actually wants to pursue master's or PhD under DAD. What's your advice on this?
Okay, so you mentioned about DAD, right? DAAD, if I'm not wrong.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So so DAD is a really interesting program, and I don't have much experience on DAD, but because I never applied, but I would say similar things are necessary for DAD as well. DAD is mainly a fellowship to do a PhD or a master's in Germany. And there are some good research programs under DAD. So DAD is a association which basically connects a lot of these European universities where you can pursue different degrees. And the DAD is quite competitive, but definitely it is achievable. But for DAD, it is quite similar documents which you need to gather. Is basically the SOP and the research interest document. Those are, I would say, important factors, including the LOR as well, or the letter of recommendation. I think there might be a IELTS requirement for that, but I would say, the LOR, research interest, and the SOP documents plays the critical role in evaluation of these the DAT fellowship basically. So
Thanks for answering the question, Dada. That might definitely help our audience. The next question I would like to ask is that, Dada, is there any difference between integrated MS PhD and non-integrated programs? And is there any advantages in pursuing integrated ones and uh, other than non-integrated ones?
right. So I think you are asking for MS plus PhD versus a regular PhD or a regular master's, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So so there are definitely pros and cons. At least what I can think of or what I know is, as an integrated MS PhD, most of the times, even though you would think that integrated MS and PhD, which means basically 2 years of masters and probably 5 years of PhD, but usually it gets shorter, which means you can get those 2 degrees within probably 4 to 5. Most likely, it's 5 to 6 years. Like you get 2 degrees, and one thing it helps is, especially if you continue your research in the same lab or in the same research area, because when you start as a master's, for example, in those MS PhD program, you gather your skill sets within first 2 years, and you finish your coursework, you get your master's degree, but basically you don't have to probably do again 5 years. You can finish early, probably in 4 years, because you are already in that same lab or in the research field. And that's when it gets easier, because as a PhD student, I would say first year or two, it just takes to get used to with the whole new system, your new research techniques, whatever techniques you are working with. The actual productive work happens, I would say, from end of second year or so. So I would say the main research which happens in the last 3 years, if you break the PhD in 2 plus 3, I'd say last 3 years are really productive, and you are doing new research, you are writing those papers or publications, you are presenting in different conferences, all those kind of things. So doing a master's plus PhD is basically giving those first 2 years to you, and you are um, using that towards your master's degree, but also you are saving your time as a PhD as well. So that really helps for those integrated programs.
Okay, I'm sure that was an eye opener for us all. I guess there are some more questions over here. So we have got that if a person is unable to secure a job in post MS or PhD, how much time is it in their hand to look for employment before they are deported back to their country?
Right. So, this is a great question. And, as an immigrant, our clock is always ticking. And honestly, I have not seen many examples where we had to get back, but it is definitely good to know these deadlines and so that you can prepare yourself. It is not that you have to be afraid of. There are different way outs and different ways to figure these situations. So either you do a master's or a PhD, you will have, there is you will be in the F1 visa or the student visa. When you complete your F1 visa, there is a thing called optional practical training, which basically means since you finished your degree, either a master's or a PhD, you are eligible to work in your research field which you have worked on. So, and you will be given like 60 days to find a new job. And that's why you have to prepare yourself. You have to start giving interviews for jobs. Or, if you are doing a PhD, if you want to do a postdoc, you have to start interviewing, start up doing those application process even before you finish your degree. Now, what happens? For example, one of us probably could not secure a job, and we finished our degree, right? Then you have only 2 months, but there is a clause that even though you cannot secure a job, if you do a volunteering as a research or in your research field. For example, there was a scenario for one of my friends where he actually finished a master's degree, but he was not able to secure a job, within that time frame. So what he did, he volunteered as a researcher in a lab, and he used that time to do the interviews and get the new job, and finally he got a job. But the downside is that during that time of volunteering you would not be getting paid, so you have to bear your own expenses, right? So that's why it is important to know when your graduation date is, right? From that time point you have 2 more months, right? So you have to work backwards from that, and you have to start preparing, I would say, around 4 to 5 months before. You have to start looking for companies who are hiring in your field, and you have to, I would say, nowadays LinkedIn is a great platform. I would say, what happens nowadays, especially for industry, is there are many different steps, definitely. But the first step is basically screening your resume. And most of the time, these resumes are screened by computers because they have computerized programs. They throw your resume and they look for keywords. And, it's a stupid analogy. And sometimes, just because we don't have the proper keywords, we don't get interviewed for the next level. And even though we have a great profile, we don't get a chance to be interviewed, right? So nowadays, that's why with the LinkedIn platform, people are reaching out to the employees who are already working in those companies, and they're requesting them, hey, can you refer me to the job? And basically, that's basically crossing that first stage of the resume screening. And once someone who are already in the company are referring you, it not necessarily you have to know him or her personally, right? Like, it is basically you are telling them that you are qualified for this job, and you are requesting them to send the resume to the hiring manager. And that's literally they're doing, right? And it is not that they are doing you a help, not necessarily. They are also minimizing a step, right? They don't have to do the resume screening. They are getting a well qualified candidate for interview right away because someone in the company are referring them, right? So, talking to those employees who are already doing a job in your field in those companies is really important nowadays. Earlier, we used to just blindly apply to different jobs, but nowadays having LinkedIn as a really good professional platform, I think 90% or 80 to 90% of the jobs usually are getting with referrals. So that's what people are taking advantage of, and I think that's the fair point, and it reduces effort from both ends. um, so I think that's what my advice would be. But definitely, as I said, if anyone is unfortunate and could not find a job within just 2 months, they can definitely do a volunteering, in a research lab or in the same field. And within that time frame, I'd say I think there is at max you can do up to a year, if I'm not wrong. So within that time frame, you have to kind of get a job and go to the next step.
Well, that was quite an informative answer from Dada, and that would surely help the audience. So, Dada, I would like to ask another question. That is, we know that when we are stepping in a new environment, if we have someone that is who is very closely associated with us by with our size, then that might help us cope with the new changing environment. So, did you have like anyone like a girlfriend or a best friend that who had helped you in coping with the new environment?
Right. So I think that's a great point, and that's why having a friend group is really necessary. So for me, it was kind of going to ASU was a determined choice, because me and my girlfriend both were got admitted to ASU. And just so that you guys know, both of us are actually JU alumni, and she was also a bachelor's from Jadavpur, and later she pursued her master's in IIT Madras. But basically, both of us applied to different universities, and finally, ASU was one of the common institutes where both of us got admitted to. But I would say having a close friend or a really good close friend circle really helps, because especially for PhD, it's a really long journey. So many time, you will be upset with your research. Something is not working in your in your lab, or sometimes we face different environment doing work. Sometimes probably one of your colleague misbehave with you. One of those instances which you don't like to share with everyone, right? So those situations really helps if you have a close friend with whom you can share. And that's why many universities provides nowadays mental health support, which is basically other way. If you don't have many friends, especially as an international student, we lag, because definitely it is a foreign land for us, right? If we don't know anyone. So that's when most of the universities provides mental health support, where basically, think about, you are sharing your those bad instances to someone which you can trust. So, and getting their independent opinion how to tackle that, right? So I would say having those really helps. And from my personal experience as well, I'd say most of the cases, having being motivated in those crucial times really helps.
Thank you so much, Dada. It was a really great answer from your side. And Priyojit from YouTube is asking, Should I start research projects under university professors in second year only? If yes, how to manage college timing and semesters and research work?
Right. So I guess this is a tough question to answer, but definitely managing, time management is a great thing, and which all of us should, try to tackle in every point of our career, because we are doing multiple things. It is now what you are asking is basically you have to do research because you want to pursue higher education, either master's or a PhD. Also, you have to do coursework, and also you have to prepare for your application, right, for master's or PhD. How would you tackle, right? So same thing you would also realize the previous question where asking about securing a job, right? So when you are doing a master's or a PhD, we have to do our research, we have to do the coursework, and also during the end of the degree, we have to look for jobs, right? We have to prepare ourselves for the interview. So all the time we are really managing different things, not only just focusing for our study or finishing an exam, which we used to do, I would say, in the very beginning of your bachelor's, like in the first year of bachelor's. If you think like that's the only thing you have done, like you are pretty much thinking about your courses and how you would prepare for those. But I would say which really helps is having a good schedule. For example, in your second year and third year, I would say focus a little bit. Definitely you would have to focus on courses. Those are important, but definitely try to split your week in a way that, for example, you would spend 1 to 2 hours every day in research. you know um, you have to, if your research needs like straight 2 to 3 hours, then probably you restrict the days. Let's say 2 days a week you will do the research. So for example, at the near the end or in the fourth year, if you are doing variety of things, if you are doing job interviews in India, if you are trying to do the application for either masters or PhD, right? Then you have a lot of things on your plate. I would say, try to work on those things, like for example, preparing for the job or preparing for the masters or PhD, those kind of things. Try to find times in the weekends, few hours, and try to maintain that. It's not that you work for that one night and you can finish it. You can just ramp it down, just like we do for our semester exams. It's not one of those things. So that's why you should, I would say, prepare, give yourself well good amount of time and start preparing early. And that's why you split your week in a way that you would assign time and maintain that throughout a few months, whatever is required. So that really helps managing the time.
Okay, that was a really profound answer from your side, Dada. And Rijit is asking from whom should the letter of recommendation typically come from, come to catch the eye of the admission office and colleagues?
Right. So typically, the LOR or letter of recommendations are coming from faculties, either with whom you have doing research with, or with whom you have taken coursework, or it can be someone from the department, even though he or she might not have taught you for any course, but may know you as a student of the department. So it has to be a faculty. It not necessarily have to be your institute. For example, you if you have a chance to do a project or a research internship in a different institute, they can also provide you letter of recommendation. For example, if you have a chance to do a industry internship, for example, as a bachelor student, you can ask your manager, whoever was your manager in those internship, in those companies, they can write for you. So basically, whoever has seen you as a student, as a researcher, and explain your skill sets, or what are the good points which were eye catching for you, that's what you should target. And you should also think about what personality you have. When you have talked or you have worked with them, what kind of person he or she is, and how good of impact you have made. When right, so that from that feeling, who will write really good for you and who will write just okay. And my advice is pick those who will write really good for you. So that's what will be my take.
Okay, so we are getting very the question number of questions are just raining because there we are getting very curious audience over here, and we have got another question that someone is asking that how to prepare for a MITEX or similar foreign research scholarship program within third year of engineering. What should an ideal profile look like?
What exam? I can you tell me the question again?
MITEX, MITACS, the Canadian one.
Okay, I am actually not much familiar with the MITEC at all. So sorry about that, but I cannot answer that.
Okay, very well. This one person said that should I be afraid of certain ethnicities on my way back home, lest I get robbed?
Um, no, I guess no, I don't think like there are a lot of these rumors that there are certain places in US are not safe, and all those things. But I don't think you should be worried about that, on that aspect, like especially being as the Indian, or being as the Indian getting targeted with people, with bad people here. But I don't think you have to be afraid of that, because you are coming with a good motive, right? You are trying to build your career, you are trying to improve yourself as a professional. But you have to also think that when you are coming here to do a higher degree, ultimately you guys are probably will be staying here after your degree. You are going into industry, or in higher in academia, and contributing to research, right? So ultimately you are also you don't have to feel that way, that you are coming here just because you are concerning about yourself, but you are also coming here to improve the research here as well, right? So I would say you don't have to be afraid of being pointed as a Indian. Of course there are good people and there are bad people, and you would kind of understand with your interactions. I would say uh, no one is perfect, right? So you try to be professional and you try to be polite, and because it's a foreign land, right? So there are definitely rules and laws. If you are treated badly, there are rules how to tackle that, right? There are industry, most of these universities has good HR or human resource council, where you can file complaints if you really think someone has misbehaved with you. So there are like, you don't have to be worried, especially at least in US, I would say. Being targeted as an Indian, that's not really we should think about in this 20th century.
Thanks for your advices, Dada. And I would like to take the next question from YouTube. Shreyoshi from YouTube has a question. Dada, what are the opportunities, like additional opportunities that we might get pursuing MS, after pursuing MS, after chemical engineering or other circuital branches like electrical or electronics? What are the opportunities we might get?
Right. So after MS, I would say most of the engineering branches will have opportunities to do PhD as well. If you guys think that is a career you want to pursue, but otherwise, there are a huge amount of industrial research opportunities which we have in US. The good thing about US is there are a huge amount of investment happens in industrial research. So there are, I have not seen this many startups or new companies back in India when I did my job search. Nowadays things are changing. There are a huge push on entrepreneurship back in India. So there are some level of new companies, startups are evolving. But over here, there are main two domains in US. One domain we call it in Silicon Valley or in the San Francisco area, which is in the southwest, and the another big hub of industrial research is in the east coast, in the northeast, or in the Boston, Massachusetts area where I am in. So all of these research hubs are mainly biotech and pharmaceutical, where not only just chemistry or biology, but people from chemical engineering, biomedical engineering, pharmaceutical sciences, nanotechnology, and very much various diverse people are getting hired in different roles, and even computer science, IT as well, because nowadays the computational research has been coming into forefront in different fields as well, like fields like pharmaceuticals. The amount of computational research are being used nowadays has been increased huge, especially after COVID, I would say. So there is a little bit of hiccup is going on in the IT industry, especially in this year. But I don't think there is anything downfall in the area of I would say biotech and pharmaceutical sciences at present in here in US. So there will be a huge amount of opportunity in industrial research. Other than that, I would say one other track I have seen people pursuing, which is after masters. Sometime they go for a MBA, which is Master of Business, which is basically another interesting path. Especially most of the times that really helps if anyone wants to go to a non-technical route in industry, which is basically you're going in the higher level managerial role. Having a MBA degree really helps on that aspect. But other than that, definitely there are a lot of scopes, like as I said, like pursuing a PhD or going into industry.
Thanks a lot, Dada. I bet this answer is going to be an eye opener for people who would like to pursue circuital branches as higher studies. So, Dada, I would like to tell you that when we usually go to a new environment, like when we shift from school to colleges, we have always seen a pool of students actually go on to develop a lot of extracurricular skills, or they might develop a new hobby. So when you went to USA, did you actually develop any extracurricular hobbies, or did you actually take part in any activity that you were previously unfamiliar to?
Right. I don't think I have grown any new hobbies too much, but definitely I have entertained my previous hobbies. Especially in most of the universities, you will have opportunities to explore different games. For example, if you are a soccer player, or even in our universities we used to play cricket. So there are all of those options where you can participate into events as well. But other than that, there are a lot of these I would say clubs available. Like I know in our universities we had outdoor club where they used to go for road trips together, or going into a hike for in a nearby mountain. So there are a lot of these activities which basically keep you motivated, and that gives you opportunity to make new friends as well. So most of these universities has these organizations, and I think the as I said, the first semester just go past like that because you are trying to find these opportunities. And that's why these are really good points, and you should kind of make a list and talk to these students who are already in those universities. Like for example, if you like to know opportunities like this or things like these for Arizona State University, I can definitely give you insights. But definitely I cannot speak about other universities. But definitely all the universities has more or less these options available. So you won't be feeling bored, or doing just study or just research. So you will have a lot of these options open to explore as well.
Okay, Dada, that really sounds intriguing. And I guess there is another question from their side. They say that, do you have a preference for R&D for a private company or research in academia? Which among the two would you suggest for someone looking to go into research?
Right. So this is a great question, and I think that's a concept comes from how we see things in India. So, for example, we always think that if I have an academic job, it's very secure, for our future in long term. But if you are working for a private company, there is always a chance, if the company closes, what happens? We might lose jobs and things like that. But I would say when you come to US, when you try to explore these options, I don't think anyone think it that way. Definitely, in academia, even in US, there are a lot of certainty, lot of these assurance of job security. But definitely, in private companies, I don't think there is not much to worry about, because most of the times, even for example, here there is a huge difference between in the job culture. If you are going to or quite a lot of difference if you are going to a big company versus a startup, for example. Because in a big company they have a well established infrastructure. There is a well set um, line of work which they do, and you will be a small part in some fragment, right, which you will do. And in startups, what happens, it changes every day. Because in startups, what happens, investors puts money on a very innovative technology which the startup is trying to build. And the investment changes time to time. For example, if a program or a type of research does not work, in long term, in clinical stage, for example, something failed, then we have to come back and reevaluate that. and start a new thing, right? And that really happens, and that affects quite a lot in the startup. But in big companies, it doesn't really affect too much because they have always a routine things to do, because all of these big pharmaceutical companies, a lot of these medications which we are taking, these companies are ultimately making these, right? So they have a straightforward things to make in general, and outside of that they're doing some kind of innovation in other aspects as well. So if something fails on those end, it doesn't really affect them too much that they have to cut down their employees, because they don't have too much profit, blah blah blah. It doesn't happen drastically in case of big companies, at least in the biotech or in pharmaceutical. So but in startups, like, there is always a tension sometimes if in clinical stage something goes wrong, or if something is not right. So but I would say, as I mentioned, there are two main hubs in US, especially in the field of pharmaceutical sciences or in biotech. um, and it is quite, I would not say easy, but it is quite manageable to get a job if anyone loses a job, because the demand is so high. And I would say, especially from the time of COVID, the importance of pharmaceutical science and biotech has been emerged. So that's why, even though tech companies are facing a or will be facing a recession, so far I have not seen that much drastic effect in the pharmaceutical science or in the biotech sector.
Thanks for providing such valuable pieces of information, Dada. So, Dada, most of my, not most, but many of my batchmates are actually, like, they are actually studying engineering, but they want to pursue a career in physics or chemistry or mathematics or higher studies. And they are like confused that how much difficulty or what are the difficulties that they are going to face while changing streams from engineering to chemistry or physics. Can you like elaborate a little bit about it, like what difficulties they are going to face?
Sure. I don't think there will be a difficulty, because I would say most of the time we face difficulties when we go other way. Like, for example, if I had to go to engineering, I had to learn some of these principles. But I don't think going from engineering to physics or chemistry, like, for example, someone would like to go from chemical engineering to chemistry, I don't think there will be too much difficulty. Rather, I would like to point out one thing here, at least what I learned from my university in Arizona State, is, um, at least as a PhD student, there can be little bit more reliability, in terms of as a or there is a little bit more economic reliability as a basic science PhD, which is basically either a biology or a biochemistry or a chemistry or a mathematics or physics. Because what happens, as I mentioned, that initial few years we get to do this teaching assistantship or TA, which means I can just teach a class which is not really super difficult for you guys, because most of the cases you have already taken those class and know this subject. And because of that, you don't have any financial issue. You won't be having any financial issues, because no matter what kind of undergraduate degree, it's engineering or basic science, these US kids are ultimately taking these basic science classes as an undergraduate. So there is a huge need of teaching assistant in these basic sciences. But if you go to engineering, for example, if you go to a PhD degree in engineering, they will most likely they will only provide you a 1 year TA support. After that, your advisor or research advisor has to pay you. So you have to find a advisor who have funding. So for us, as a chemistry PhD student, we had that flexibility that even if our advisor could not pay us, we still be paid as long as we do the TA or the teaching assistancy. That is the advantage, I would say, in basic science PhD. But as an engineering PhD, they most likely will provide you 1 year of TA, and after that, you have to find an advisor who will support you for your funding. So, other than that, in technical knowledge, I don't think there will be a problem with just by degree if you want to change from a chemical engineering BTech to a physics or mathematics PhD. Like I don't think there will be a huge difference, because anyway, all of us learned a new subject or a topic when we pursued our PhD. Like, even though I had a bachelor's in chemistry, master's in chemistry, whatever research I did in my PhD, even though the degree was in chemistry, it was mainly my research was in biomedical engineering, nanotechnology, and chemical engineering, some sort. So it is kind of quite interdisciplinary. So I don't think I have learned whatever in my bachelor's and master's. It helped, but it like I need to learn a lot of new things, and that's what will happen in with any PhD. Like, even though you want to do, for example, a chemical engineering to a chemical engineering PhD, even then you have to learn new things because the research will be completely new to you. So I don't think changing the field will not affect too much, as long as you are eager to learn new things.
Yeah, that's right. Like staying updated is actually the most important thing. So, so with this, I'm moving on to the next question. Dada, you had done your master's from IIT Bombay and you have pursued your PhD in USA. So I would like to ask this question that if you had the opportunity to go back in time and choose whether you would like to do the masters from USA or from India, then what would you choose?
Right. I would say the one constant at that time was basically the economic situation. So, as I just mentioned, that most of the time the master's degree in US is not funded, and you have to really struggle for these scholarships. And I would say that's why probably my decision was to go for a PhD in India at that time. But I would say definitely, if you get a chance to do a master's in US, the research environment is much more different. It's quite advanced as well. So, for example, even being as a bachelor, whoever is doing a bachelor's degree in US, even they are getting good research exposure in labs, right? So that's when the foundation begins, right? Like, um, definitely most of us don't have that privilege or that option to do it, right? Most of us finish our bachelor's degree and sometime master's degree here in India. But definitely, I would say sometimes all of these things comes into play, and you have to think, even though you have the option or the opportunity at that period of time, probably it's not ideal. And that's why I chose, especially for my case, doing a master's degree in India. And to be honest with you, I think until my bachelor's, like, I have not spent time outside of my state or West Bengal. So I would say, for me it was a good decision at that time, because I was first time away from home when I did my masters. I get used to that, right? Like, if you are in bachelor's, you are still in home, you are with your friends and family closely, but then you are suddenly in US, right? Like you are completely detached of all those, right? So for me it was a smaller transition at the beginning, right? Like in my masters I was not that far, but I was still away from my family and I was getting used to it, right? So then when I did my PhD here, of course it was quite far, but still I was quite used to with the fact that I was not living with my family, even in my masters. So that helped a little bit as well, psychologically, getting used to that.
Okay, so you did mention that that a person who might want to pursue higher studies in USA, he might face some difficulties regarding regarding the funding of his course. So, Dada, can you say how can a person who would like to pursue higher studies in foreign can maximize his or her chances in getting his or her course fully funded?
Right. So making it generalized is a really diverse answer will create. So just because every country has a different system, especially US is very different from Europe. So as I said, for US, doing a PhD and a master's has a set process. For PhD, most of the time, getting funding is quite easy because, especially for basic science, for example, in my university, I had 6 years of TA support for my PhD, which basically means that I can do up to 6 years of teaching assistantship, and I will be uh, fully covered with my funding. And um, basically, sometimes it is only 1 year or 2 year of TA support, especially in the engineering field. And for those cases, the rest of the years, the advisor take cares of the funding. And these are the things which students should plan early, and that's why it's important to email the faculties beforehand that if they have vacancies for students, which basically means if they have enough funding to support you for your PhD. So that's why I was telling that just the research topic is not really, it's important, but there are a lot of these other factors which comes into play when you decide and choose your option from whatever you got. So I would say for other countries, like for I know for Germany there are some of these scholarship, like Max Planck has their own scholarship. There are these DAT scholarships which are there. So there are most of these European colleges, the institute have their own scholarship, which you guys have to kind of individually apply. So that's when it gets really, from your side, it's just a lot of work. That's why I said, like, once you clear your GRE and TOEFL, the US application is very straightforward, and you just work on your SOP, manage your, find your letter of recommendation, whoever you want to take with, from and but other than that, you just have to contact different universities individually if you want to do that in other countries. But here as well, if you like to be assured, you should start emailing these professors, whoever you think that you are close with your research interest.
Thanks a lot, Dada. That was a really great information from your side. And I would like to ask that in this second. Yeah. We know that getting scholarships in MS programs are a little bit on the tougher side as compared to the PhD programs. So, what's your take on it?
Right. So it is tough. Definitely, it is not 100% guaranteed that you will be getting a scholarship. But for example, in bad scenario, in case you are not successful to get a scholarship, what you can do is you can start your degree, and then when you are there, you can start looking for these on-campus jobs. As a master student, you are allowed to do on-campus jobs. So there are certain, jobs which are available on campus. Starting from working in cafeteria to as a research assistant. Sometimes faculties, whoever you are doing research with, as a master student, even then they can fund you. And also there are options. I know, for example, in my university, master student also work as a teaching assistant in some cases. So it is not fully guaranteed, because as I said, as a for PhDs, our funding situation is really easy and it usually figured out already. But for master student, sometimes or most of the times, they figure out one of these ways when they are already there. During the first semester, they apply for these on-campus jobs, and or these research fundings for other faculties if they have any availabilities, or these teaching assistants or TA opportunities.
Okay, that was really informative. And I would like to ask the next question, that is, does the Jadavpur University or the IIT Bombay tag or any other IIT tags help in getting offers from the foreign universities? Or does our marks and work speak for ourselves?
Right. Definitely, I would say tag matters. Definitely, I having an IIT tag makes a difference. And also, I would say Jadavpur has a well-renowned profile. Like, for example, if you want to compare Calcutta University, there is tons of colleges, right? When someone is getting a degree versus one of those colleges versus Jadavpur universities, definitely there is a much more weightage because it is well known. So I would say, unless your profile is really speaks for you, definitely these tags matters.
Okay, thank you for answering that question. I would like to ask the next question. Is that I have heard from people like being from India, you might be you might be treated in a different way because the language of communication is not same. That's the only reason. So, was there any difference in the way professors interacted with you when compared to other students?
Right. I don't think like you would face that. So one small suggestion which I will give you, especially if you are not a native speaker. For example, me and many of us, we have our schooling and our education in our native language, right? Like we are not very used to speaking in English all the time during our undergraduate, for example, right? Unless you have an English medium schooling, you are a native speaker for other reasons, right? So one thing really helps when you come here. Try to be slow with your speaking, and sometimes we feel very insecure if you are speaking little bit wrong English, and that's when people think, oh, if I'm speaking anything wrong, what the other person which might think, and that's when we try to be introvert, especially in these circumstances when we are coming to foreign countries. I would say here what matters is if you can express your opinion to others by the communication which you are speaking with, right? So being slow, what really helps, because different parts of the world has different accent, so they are used to hearing American English, right? So when we are speaking as an Indian, we always has an accent. So that's why, even though you are speaking a really good English, but because of your accent, he or she might not catch you. So that's why I would suggest, at least first couple of months, you try to go slow with your speaking. So that really helps. And also try to be as accurate as you can. But, even though you are not 100% accurate, like, you should not be shy or be worried or be afraid of, with your communication skills. I would say, only thing matters when you practice more and more, and that can only happen when you are here, right? Like when you are in West Bengal or in your country, like you are not really communicating with English in your everyday life, right? Like when you are here, you are speaking English in every minute, right? So then you get used to it and you will be really good at it, and it happens to every one of us, and that's what will happen to you as well.
Right, that was very insightful, Dada. I would like to ask a few more questions that are on YouTube. These are the last ones. Basically, Mrinmoy is asking that being a third year student, how to focus on research work in spite of spending the whole day preparing for GATE and college academic.
Right. So that is what I was telling. So it's a really good question, and that's when the time management is important, and also it is important that what you are planning to do next. So I know you are mainly giving the GATE for PhD or MTech admission most of the times, and also if you are trying to transition to US or foreign countries, research experience really matters. So that's why you're probably trying to build your research profile doing a research. So I would say, divide your week and try to, you know prioritize, like, what is your goal in life? Do you think doing a master's in US or doing a PhD in US versus doing a master's or PhD by qualifying with the GATE? If you think GATE is your first priority, um, then you should focus on that and spend more hours on that. Otherwise you should do the other way, right? So I would say, divide your week and prioritize it. What is your uh, top priority of your career goals, and work more or provide more time of the week on that. And definitely you have to have a plan B, right? Like, for example, um, if we are applying for abroad and we didn't get an admission, you should have a backup plan, right? For example, I can give you one of my instances. In the time after I finished my masters, I even though I scheduled my GRE and TOEFL exams, I had some issues and some delays acquiring my passport, and that's why I could not appear to those exams. And luckily, I secured the NET exam, and that's why I got a job as a research assistant in India. So I spent there for a year before coming here. So you always have to have a backup plan, and our life has different scenarios, and COVID makes it also difficult, right? None of us thought that we'll be having these virtual classes and all those things. So um, you don't know what the circumstances would be, but you should not be afraid of, you should not be demotivated, you should be always inspired, and you have a lot more years to do exciting things. And since you are in Jadavpur, you have a lot more connections, you have a lot more opportunities for your future career, so you should really look forward to those.
Okay, Dada, that was a very nice answer from your side, and I guess a lot of questions has been answered, and I think it's been a wonderful time having you with us. Thanks a lot for sharing your valuable insights. I'm sure all our evident audience have enjoyed it thoroughly, because it's quite evident from the overwhelming performance and their response of their on our YouTube channel. However, the time has come to an end for this session. I hope to have you with us again in the future. And a lot of questions that weren't even asked, I think those have been answered too. So thank you so much, Radha, for providing such valuable insights.
Sure. It was very nice talking to you guys, and keep up good work. I really appreciate again for the effort of the JU Science Club. And if anyone of you have interest in the field of pharmaceutical science or in the biotech, especially you can reach out to me, or I can connect you to others if I know anyone on your field of interest. So feel free to connect with me if you like. So I will try my best to help you guys out. Thank you and good luck.
Thank you, Dada.
All right. Bye bye.
Thank you, Dada.